On July 31st, 2005, in Nunavut, northern Canada, 17-year-old Alex Messenger stood 150 miles south of the Arctic Circle. The evening was bright and clear. The summer sun, still high, made the surface of Princess Mary Lake shimmer. The lake, vast and still, lay surrounded by miles of exposed rock and windswept scrub. Slanted pines clung to the land, the last of their kind, shaped by Arctic winds. Far from civilization, it was a place for young adventurers like Alex. Alex scrambled up a steep scree slope and paused to look back at the camp below. He saw his friends, their tents, and the canoes pulled up on shore. For 4 weeks, they had paddled through twisting river systems and navigated whitewater rapids, pushing deeper into the wilderness. At the summit, Alex braced against an icy blast. The land flattened into rolling granite domes. Grass was scarce. It was a lunar landscape, stark and bare, the highest point for miles. From there, he could see everything. He reached for his camera. Then something caught his eye. It was brown fur, motionless, 30 or 40 feet away. Alex squinted. It might be a moose or caribou. He was not sure and did not want to find out. But then the animal moved, bounding towards him on 4 legs. He was alone, facing a 600-pound predator. Disaster was here. Alex needed to stay calm and remember his training. But there was only so much he could do. The attack was sudden. Teeth sank into his leg. He blacked out. His last thought was no. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. I wasn't supposed to die this way. In mid-July 2005, 3 canoes moved through the pristine rivers of Canada's Northwest Territories. Alex, 17, was among 5 young explorers on the adventure of a lifetime. They were on a 6-week, 600-mile voyage through one of North America's most remote areas. The group included Alex, Mike, Augie, John, and Darren. Each had solid experience in backcountry canoe travel. Alex felt a mix of excitement and nerves. He wondered if he had made the right decision, but he was thrilled it was happening. Camp from Minnesota organized the excursion. The 5 teens were led by 27-year-old Dan, an expedition veteran responsible for getting them home in one piece. The days were long, and the group quickly covered the first few hundred miles. They paddled through crystal-clear waters and ancient evergreen forests, navigating rolling whitewater rapids. The trip started well, filled with fun. The first weeks passed in a blur. By late July, the tree line thinned. They left the great northern forests, entering the subarctic tundra. Silence gripped the group as the vast, untouched landscape stretched before them. Alex felt a sense of reset. Out here, the world's pace changed, something hard to replicate outside the wilderness. They entered Nunavut province. In the permafrost ground, little grew. On day 21, 3 weeks in, they reached Dubon Lake, the largest in the region. Even in July, it was almost entirely covered in ice. No trees as far as the eye could see. The open expanse and sky changed their perspective. They reached the end of Dubon Lake, marking the trip's halfway point. They took their first full rest day near Dubon Canyon. There, they saw their first grizzly bear. The group set up camp on a frozen plateau overlooking the glacial canyon. Alex and Mike looked down at the frenzied river below. The tundra stretched to the horizon, infinite and empty. Not entirely empty. Mike interrupted Alex, pointing out the grizzly bear standing on the opposite riverbank, staring at them. The bear was huge, maybe 400 or 500 pounds. Even at a distance, its thick fur showed the muscle beneath. Despite the natural barrier, it was a terrifying sight. The bear was coming towards camp. Mike yelled, and the bear turned and bounded away. It was a sobering moment. They were glad to see the bear, but only like that, across a canyon with a raging river, the bear running away. Most attacks happen when bears are startled. The sighting was a reminder. The group reviewed their precautions. They had bear poppers, cartridges that exploded like gunshots. They had aerosols with pepper spray, effective at close range. But who wanted to get that close to a charging bear? They discussed how to avoid confrontation, back away slowly, speak calmly, and show the bear they were not a threat. Alex and his friends paddled across Princess Mary Lake in their 3 canoes. They navigated between slabs of floating ice, aiming for a rocky island in the middle of the waterway where they planned to camp. The island rose steeply from the shore. Finding flat ground away from the main ridge was tough, but they eventually found a good spot and set up camp, planning to take a layover day. After setting up, the boys went to explore the ridge. Exhausted, Alex decided to nap before joining them. When he woke up, he realized he had overslept and that the others had left. He rushed out, heading up the hill alone, passing the others on their way down. Dan, the expedition leader, mentioned the amazing views at the top. Alex thanked him and continued climbing. 10 minutes later, Alex reached the top amidst jagged rocks and granite domes. The views were magnificent in every direction. He held his heavy-duty plastic camera case, looking for the best spot to take pictures. He climbed one of the granite domes but felt a strange sensation. He wasn't alone. He saw it then, brown fur at the edge of his vision. His body tensed before his mind processed it. An animal was close, about 30 feet away. At first, he thought it was a musk ox, a dangerous enough proposition. Musk oxen could charge and cause significant harm. Alex had to decide whether to stand his ground or back away. The animal faced the same dilemma. This was critical distance. The closer the distance, the more likely the animal would fight rather than run. As they moved into full view of each other, Alex realized it wasn't a musk ox. It was a grizzly bear, much worse. He remembered his training. Don't run, back away slowly, speak calmly. He wanted to run, but he knew that would trigger the bear's chase instinct. They stood still, each considering the next move. Alex started to back away, speaking softly but with a shaking voice. Suddenly, the bear made its decision. It launched towards him, then skidded to a halt 10 feet away, a bluff charge. It dragged its claws across the earth, bared its teeth, and growled. Alex kept backing away, hands raised. Then the bear charged again, this time for real. Alex switched gears, yelling for help, trying to alert his friends. He felt the ground shaking, the bear growling mid-stride. Instinctively, he swung his heavy camera case. It hit the bear's nose hard enough to turn its head to the side. The camera clunked over the bear's shoulder. Everything moved in slow motion. As the grizzly's head twisted away, Alex saw the whites of its eyes, the saliva dripping from its yellow teeth. But it kept coming. On instinct, he jumped sideways, dodging the first attack. It missed him on the first pass, but turned and came at him again. They darted across the ridge, the bear swiping as Alex dodged. The deadly dance couldn't last forever. The next time it came, they were close. It bit at his leg, but Alex pulled away just in time. The jaws snapped shut inches from his leg, but the bear reached up with its paw. Alex saw it inches from his face, the open palm, the claws, the wrinkles. The image was seared in his mind. He felt the impact like a fly swatted out of the air. The bear didn't slow down. Alex's head whipped to the side and he went flying. On the ground, the bear's jaws clamped around his leg just below the hip. He felt the teeth go in, pain shooting through him. He yelled, filled with pain and sorrow. Then everything went black. When Alex came to, he was curled in a fetal position. The landscape was tilted, his head spinning. He didn't know how long he'd been out. He realized he was alive, still on the island. Elation filled him, followed by fear. The bear was still there, trotting away but watching him. He averted his eyes and lay motionless. The bear swung its head with every step, checking to ensure the threat was neutralized. Waiting was hard. He wanted to run but knew he couldn't. Once the bear was over the ridge, he waited a bit longer. Then he got up and checked his leg. It was wet. He thought it was blood and feared he'd bleed out. But to his surprise, as he looked at his hand, it wasn't blood. It was covered in bear saliva. Alex didn't know how bad the injury was. First, he needed to get away. With a last look behind him, he staggered downhill. Adrenaline pumped through him. His leg was damaged, but he pushed on, needing to reach his friends. When Alex stumbled into camp yelling about a bear, his friends laughed in disbelief. Then they saw his torn clothes and the blood pooling around his feet. Dan, a trained first aider, stepped forward. Alex explained the attack, the bite. It took him a minute to get down the hill. By then, Alex couldn't move his injured leg. Dan helped him sit and assessed his injuries. Alex's thick winter clothing had offered some protection, leaving him bruised and scraped but without deep slashes. The bite to his right thigh, just below the hip, was a major concern. One canine had punctured a 1/4 inch from his femoral artery. If it had hit, he would have bled out in minutes. Next to the puncture, he had compression wounds from the bear's tooth, causing deep tissue damage without breaking the skin. Other pressure injuries from the teeth wrapping around his thigh were evident, and some toes were cut clean at the tip, bleeding heavily. Dan cleaned and dressed the wounds, then reached for the satellite phone. He called group headquarters in Minnesota to report the attack. Headquarters had to coordinate a response with Canadian authorities. After back-and-forth communications, Dan received grim news. Their remote location offered little aerial support, and the few helicopters available were in use elsewhere. Alex's wound was serious. It would worsen, but he wasn't in imminent danger of bleeding to death. The best option was to continue to Baker Lake, a small town with an airport, located 1,000 miles north of the U.S.-Canadian border. Dan was instructed to monitor Alex's condition closely. As night fell, pairs took turns keeping watch, clutching air poppers and spray. Dan checked Alex's injuries hourly. Each movement sent spasms of pain through Alex's leg, and when he drifted off, his dreams took him back to the attack. At 4:30 a.m. on August 1st, a pale pink dawn broke across the misty lake. They managed Alex's wound as best they could, then prepared to get on the water. Getting to the boats was a challenge, as Alex had to be carried. Baker Lake was 100 miles away through harsh tundra and icy waterways. There was no alternative. Alex focused on survival. They paddled east into the lake, the mist clearing to reveal blue skies and stunning views. However, Alex saw grizzlies in every shadow, the trauma fresh. He faced pressing concerns, an infection from the bite. Bear mouths are dirty, and rabies was a death sentence without timely treatment. Dan kept in contact with headquarters, updating Alex's parents and doctors. They were making good time and confident they'd reach Baker Lake in time. But things changed once they reached 30 Mile Lake. On the evening of August 3rd, Alex shivered violently as his friends set up camp. A driving wind blasted the lake, and black sheets of freezing rain closed in. By morning, one canoe with their food and gear had floated away. Progress halted for 2 days, trapped by the storm, one canoe down and most of their food and supplies missing. A burning sensation crept up Alex's leg. His wounds showed signs of infection. They treated it with antibiotics from their med kit. By August 5th, 5 days since the attack, Alex still needed a rabies shot. Their luck turned slightly when Dan and another boy found the lost food tin half buried in sand. They treated Alex's leg and hoped for better weather. On August 6th, the weather cleared. They squeezed into the remaining boats and paddled with urgency. They entered a new river system, making good progress. They didn't stop to wonder at the herds of caribou or the ancient graveyard left by nomadic tribes. Their minds were fixed on Baker Lake. In the afternoon, Dan checked Alex's wound again. There was pus and it was warm to the touch. The wound wasn't responding to antibiotics. Discolored skin spread around Alex's hip, and the compression wounds had turned into open, festering holes. The flesh was dying, showing signs of gangrene. Left untreated, it could become fatal. Dan called headquarters again. Medical control authorized more aggressive wound debridement. It was incredibly painful, but necessary to stop the infection. Out came the painkillers and a leather-clad multi-tool, which Alex shoved into his mouth. In a tent, with Alex biting on leather, Dan used scissors to cut out the dead tissue. The tools they had were not effective for this infection. Without action, Alex risked sepsis. He needed treatment as soon as possible. They were still 50 miles from Baker Lake, and the satellite phone had 1 bar left. Dan prepared to make their final call. They braced for bad news, but Dan's face broke into a smile after a few minutes. The authorities were on their way. A helicopter had been dispatched. Dan gave their coordinates, and soon a helicopter appeared. The tranquility shattered by the thrum of the engine and the blast of rotor blades. The helicopter landed, and a man emerged, asking who was attacked by a bear. Alex raised his hand. The man looked him up and down, assessing the situation. Not everyone could fit in the helicopter. Alex needed company, but the others would have to canoe the rest of the way. The extraction team flew Alex to Baker Lake. A week after the attack, he saw a doctor who referred him to Winnipeg for the vital rabies shot. It took 2 months and multiple drugs to turn the tide on the infection. Even then, not all his wounds healed. Back home, Alex faced his fears at a local zoo. Seeing grizzlies helped desensitize him and come to terms with the attack. He found it helpful, feeling relieved the bears were enclosed while he was outside. Today, almost 20 years later, Alex still enjoys hiking and canoeing. He volunteers with a backcountry search and rescue unit in Minnesota, feeling a sense of full circle. Helping others, he empathizes with their struggles. He credits their escape to their training and their ability to remain calm, breaking the journey back to Baker Lake down into manageable parts. You have no influence over so many things, Alex reflected. If you get stuck on them, you're wasting energy. Focus on what you can impact and make a change towards that. That's what I tried to do. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate your time and hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked what you saw, be sure to check out the other great content on our channel. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more. Thank you again, and see you in the next video.